Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for April 12th through 18th. This week I read one book, I watched 5 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 2 books. Before we get into the actual wrap-up of it all, I have a couple of housekeeping things. Firstly, this video is being recorded on Friday instead of on Sunday because on Sunday, about the time this goes live, depending on when I put it up, I will have just gotten to a hotel room in Paris after 3 flights all of Saturday and probably have 0 brain cells to actually record a video, so we're doing it early. Secondly, last week on Monday, I released a video I've been working on for 4 years. You see, when I turned 36, I was like, hey internet, what book should I read before I turn 40? And then I vlogged that experience. And my birthday was on that Monday, so I put that video up for you. It's almost 2.5 hours long. It's completely captioned. Enjoy. However, the one book I read with my eyeballs this week, I knew I probably wasn't going to enjoy because that was Never Never by Colleen Hoover and Tarryn Fisher. Now I picked this up specifically because there's a bingo board I'm trying to complete that says pick up a book based on a 1-star review, and my friend Rachel over at Reads with Rachel gave this 1 star, so I was like, I guess I'm finally reading a Colleen Hoover book, even though I didn't really want to. This book is about 2 teenagers named Charlie and Silas. They are in love with each other, or at least that's what they're led to believe, when they both suddenly come into their consciousness at school and realize that neither one of them knows who they are or what's going on. Through context clues from other students, they realize that they are dating, and then they also figure out that both of them are having this thing happen where they have no idea what's going on. Eventually they find out that this consciousness thing resets every 48 hours and they have no idea why this is happening, and they're trying to figure out based on different clues in their lives why this is happening, who did this to them, what's going on with their lives, these types of things. Now the premise, I will tell you, does sound kind of interesting. I would also want to solve this mystery if I myself were to wake up in this type of situation. However, this book makes absolutely no sense and it doesn't actually follow up on any of the weird clues it gives you. Sure, it follows up on a couple of things and you can kind of hand wave at some of the things that happen, but mostly it's pretty garbage. It doesn't actually make a lot of sense and I wouldn't recommend it. But I ticked off that square on that bingo board I was working on, so yay for me. As for the shows I watched this week, which is definitely the majority of this because I was visiting people, I was away over the weekend because of my birthday, all those types of things, one of the things we watched was the entire 4-part series called Trust Me, the False Prophet. This is a documentary series about this guy who decided to say that he was a prophet for the FLDS church. And as it turns out, this couple actually moved into the same town as these people, and both of the people in this couple have experience in the entertainment industry, and they decided to kind of try to make a documentary about these people, but we're also trying to figure out if there was abuse happening, and yeah, there definitely was. This man, I believe, had 23 wives, and I believe at least 9 of them were underage. This was put together over months upon months upon months of footage and getting the FBI involved, and it was very, very intriguing. The next thing we watched was something a little bit more light, and that was the first 2 episodes of A Man on the Inside. This seems absolutely delightful. Our main character is played by Ted Danson, and he is retired at this point. He used to be a college professor. His wife has sadly passed on, and he answers an ad in the newspaper because this person is looking for somebody to infiltrate this retirement community to figure out who stole an item from somebody who lives there. So basically he's going in as a spy, but he's not a perfect spy, and it's just full of hilarious little situations. If you've seen The Good Place or if you've seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, you'll definitely see actors that you've seen before, which is just delightful. I also continued watching Veronica Mars. I kind of wanted to finish at least up until the end of the 3rd season before we left on this trip, but I don't think I'm going to have time because, like I said, I'm filming this on Friday. I have Whiskey Club tonight, which is funny because we're actually tasting a bunch of different gins, and then obviously tomorrow I fly, so I'm not going to have time probably to finish it, but I'll see what I can do about finishing it while I'm on the trip. I watched between episodes 3 and 18 in the 3rd season, and just as a reminder, I had never seen the 3rd season before. This one is structured a little bit differently than the previous 2 seasons because the previous 2 seasons had one overarching case that was being worked on, and this one kind of had a case that wrapped up, and then another case that wrapped up, and I have a feeling we're going to go into another case before this one ends. Also, it is super weird to watch a show and have a character be killed off and then still see that character in the title sequence. I understand it's probably a contract thing with the actor, especially because it seems more so in this season than any other season of the show so far, where all of the main people are in that title sequence, but there's a lot of episodes that those people just aren't in, and I think that just has to to do with the different structure of this season. I am very much enjoying it. I am also looking forward to rewatching the 4th season, which I did watch shortly after it came out, and I'm kind of bummed there is no 5th season because I would kind of like to see how things go after the tragedy at the end of the 4th season that I definitely remember happening. And then quite shortly I did of course stay current on jet lag. We're into the 4th episode, which will be coming up on YouTube soon for you, but it's already up on Nebula for me. And things are definitely heating up in this game because if you don't get to a certain place at a certain time and if you don't get enough coins, you're gonna be completely screwed, and it's super interesting. Also interesting is the other thing I watched on Nebula, which is Tom Scott England. This time he's in Nottinghamshire. I won't tell you exactly what he was doing there, but it was definitely very interesting, and I actually have not background in this specifically, but background in doing things that are a little bit similar. I wasn't doing it in the same type of context, but he has to go into some very confined spaces, and I used to be a tour guide in caves, so I also had to do that at some points. So that's just a little teaser as to what he might be doing in this next episode. It's not exactly that, but it's adjacent. As for the one movie I watched this week, that was 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, which is the second in the trilogy of the 28 Years Later movies, but I guess the 4th of 5 parts in this series as a whole, because we started 28 days, 28 weeks, now we're into 28 years, but we're watching the second movie in the 28 years because there's going to be a 3rd one, especially with how this one ended, which seemed quite abrupt, actually. So if you've never heard about this series before, we are 28 years after a zombie apocalypse has happened on the Isle of Britain. We're following mostly characters who weren't even alive when that happened, although in this one there's definitely a character who was alive when that happened. And we're seeing these characters and what they believe and the weird things that happen because of what they believe, and that's where I'm gonna leave it, quite honestly. Because as I said, even though this is the 4th part in an entire series that I will eventually have 5 things, this is the 2nd part in a more condensed trilogy, and to really talk about any of the things that are happening here, I'm going to be spoiling things that happen in the 1st part of the trilogy, so I'll just move on. Speaking of things that are in a series, I've read the 2nd book in a duology, and that's Everyone Wants to Rule the World Except Me. This is the follow-up to How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying, and I was very excited to get back into this because I remembered really loving the 1st book. However, I've read literally hundreds of books since that, so I knew there was going to be some fine details I definitely wasn't going to remember. I wasn't going to remember names and that type of stuff, and one of the things I love so much about this 2nd book is the whole 1st chapter is a previously on, and it tells you all of the things that you've probably forgotten from the 1st book, which I loved so much. If you're not familiar with this series, in the 1st book we have this woman named Davi, and she's from our world, but one day she just wakes up in this pond in this kind of weird wildlife setting, and this old wizardy type man tells her that she is part of a prophecy to stop the Dark Lord. And she's like, okay, cool, and she trains up to try to do this, and ultimately the Dark Lord kills her off. And then when that happens, she wakes up in that pond again, and she just keeps looping over and over and over again, trying to be the person that stops the Dark Lord. After she lives hundreds of lives trying to do that, she decides in the 1st book, screw this, instead of trying to defeat the Dark Lord, I'm going to try to become the Dark Lord. When we left off at the end of the 1st book, something very significant happened that kind of changed the whole narrative on its head, and then we're going into this book being like, okay, how are you gonna fix this situation? And it is incredibly entertaining. I'm not going to tell you specifics about the 2nd book because again, it's the 2nd book in this duology, but it is a duology, so if you read these books back to back, that's one series completed, which I love when that happens. This is also the type of series that I could see myself rereading because there are so many fun little details. Also, this character's brain is just so fun to be inside of because she's so snarky. She's bisexual, so she's always talking about this himbo boyfriend or this sexy lady orc or that type of thing, which is just hilarious, honestly. I can't say enough good things about this series. You should read it. The other audiobook I listened to this week is The Salt Grows Heavy. This is a novella about this woman who is a mermaid and a plague that happened, and she's currently on a journey with a plague doctor. What I can say about this is this had an interesting premise and I wanted to know what was going to happen in this circumstance, and it had really good bones for a story idea, but there wasn't enough connective tissue to make me actually care about this story as a whole. Because they started on this adventure, something happened, it was giving us these new interesting things that could be fleshed out into a very interesting story, but because I didn't really have any context for a lot of the things that were happening, I didn't really care so much, and it was so short that it was hard hard to really care. I've only ever read one other thing by this author, and I can't remember exactly what I thought about it because it's been a while. I remember seeing this author's name and going, I didn't really enjoy the first one I read by this author, but maybe that was a one-off, maybe I'll enjoy this one better. I think it was about the same. This author uses beautiful words and beautiful descriptions for things, and you can kind of really picture certain things, but there's, like I said, not enough connective tissue to really bring this together into one cohesive thing that I care about. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down in the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment, but you want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit. Please go watch that 40 before 40 vlog because it took so long to film, and I will see you later. Bye!